Welcome to 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. Empowering women like you to amplify your voice, your message, your movement. We believe that if 10,000 new women stepped into high-level leadership platforms, we can transform the industries across the planet. 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. And now your host, Narissa Street.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for tuning back into the podcast. You know what podcast it is. It's the podcast you subscribe to. You already know who I am. I am Narissa Street, and I am your plucky little host here to bring some really amazing origin stories of some extraordinary women who are just like you. Today, I am beyond excited to bring to you someone whose podcast has, hold on, folks, over 1 million downloads. Breathe, people. Okay, breathe. She has over 1 million downloads, but this is because she's giving us some quality content. Okay, and not only that, she's done some amazing other things as well. And we're going to get into that. So please, please, please open your ears, open your eyes, those of you watching on YouTube, to Sheena Yap Chan. How are you?
Hey, Narissa. I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me to your show. I'm super honored to be here today to just chit chat and hopefully help your listeners, take a step forward to their journey.
Well, I'm excited to hear all about that because your journey has been absolutely amazing. So I know who you are, but I want you to tell my listeners who you are. So who are you?
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Sheena Yap Chan. I live in Toronto, Canada, and I am a keynote speaker, coach, international bestseller, also award-winning podcaster on building self-confidence. And everything really started with my podcast, which is called The Tao of Self-Confidence, where I interview Asian women about their journey to self-confidence. Since then, I've been able to interview over 700 Asian women on this topic and have gotten over 1 million downloads. And this is not something that happens overnight. I've had my podcast for over 5 years. And I just kept building it. And for me, I really wanted to create a stronger representation of Asian women because we're still brought up to be silent, to not speak our voice. And literally, as what's been happening in the world, our silence is literally killing us. And so it's really important for me to dismantle the model minority myth we go through, right? Especially when people say all Asian women are quiet, submissive, and obedient, or we're treated as sex objects. That's not the case. I've been able to interview women who can fly a plane with her feet because she was born with no arms. Also a woman who sings and writes Christmas songs for a living, and just Christmas songs. And so, showcasing multifaceted Asian women can really, debunk these myths, right? And realize I can go out there and do my own thing. If it's possible for her, it's possible for me. And these are the reasons why I did that, because growing up in Canada in the late 80s, early 90s, I never saw anybody who looked like me. There was no Asian role models out there. And if it was very, 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 very few, or there was a huge gap in between to showcase the next person who was an Asian person role model. And so I don't want our future generation or our current generation to go through life without having Asian role models to look up to, especially now that it's 2021. We definitely need more representation, right? We're still very underrepresented. And that's why we've also came out with books called Asian Women Who Boss Up and International Women of Color Who Boss Up, because these are books that you never see in the bookstores or on Amazon. Well, they are now because we've created it. But back then, I never saw any books where you highlight 16 Asian women on a cover of a book or 16 amazing women of color in a cover of a book, right? And this is needed now more than ever as companies keep telling us they are for diversity and inclusion when they just, tick a couple of check marks to make the bare minimum. And also with what's been going on, we all need to stand in solidarity, right? We all go through different forms of racism. We all go through different forms of model minority myths. And women have been affected by the pandemic a lot worse than men. Women of color, a lot more. So this is why it's so important to help bring women up and show them what's possible and create this movement so that we can have more women leadership, out there. And I remember reading an article in Reuters saying in a post-pandemic world, in order to create a successful one is to have more women leaders. But that can't happen if, we stay silent. We don't speak up. We don't go out there and forge our own path. And it's not easy, of course. It's not easy. I want people to realize, yeah, it's scary. It's you doubt yourself a lot. You wonder if half the things you're doing are right. But, as long as you have a huge purpose, it'll take you to where it's going. It may not look like it now, but when you look back, you'll be like, everything makes sense. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, it sounds like you're very passionate about what you're doing, and that's awesome. You and I have the same vision as far as people understanding the value in their voice. So I think what is key for my particular audience in that is there's a decision that has to be made about that. So I want us to go into your origin story. When did that moment come for you? Because there's a point we're here now, 5 years later, started the podcast. We're looking for these people, but there was a point when you saw the gap and the gap was affecting you. When did you know that it was you who was meant to close the gap?
I think it really started when about 10 years ago when my aunt passed away. She passed away from a sudden accident, and it was, heartbreaking. Part of us didn't want to believe it because it happened so fast. And it made me realize how short life is, right? And I didn't want to look back thinking I didn't do anything worthwhile in my life. And so, of course, it didn't happen overnight. I was still at my job at the time, but slowly all these things started popping up, right? It's like, okay, now it's time to make that change, go for that leap. And sometimes we're so scared to just take a leap of faith because we're not too sure what's going to happen. And especially when you're Asian, like to embrace the unknown is like a huge thing, right? Most people want stability. They want that steady paycheck. But what happens when that steady paycheck is gone, right? You don't know what to do. And that's why it's so important to embrace the unknown so that we can expect something that, anything good can come out of it versus thinking anything bad. And just knowing that, it's not always going to be steady. It's going to be like a roller coaster. It's going to go up and down. And I think as I was going through my journey, I went through so many things, tried so many things, failed a lot of these things. And I think just, when you're on the internet and you're on TV and you see like the same 5 guys on stage, you kind of get sick of it. I got sick of it. And I'm like, where are the women? Most of all, where are the women of color and where are the Asian women? Like, where are all these women that are doing amazing things and nobody's talking about it? And so that's what made me really go out there and create the podcast. I tell people, if you want representation, if you crave that representation, start with yourself, right? You don't need to wait for anyone to do it. Just start, right? Even if you start from zero. When I started my podcast, I started with 0 downloads, right? I started interviewing people who I knew, my friends. And then slowly I got the courage to start reaching out to different people, right? Thinking maybe they might be a great candidate. And I'm not saying every single woman said yes when I asked them. Of course, I got a lot of rejections, right? It's just all part of the process. And I think these are very important issues or topics to talk about because people think, oh, it's so easy to do this. Everything's just free flowing. No, actually, some days I want to throw my laptop against the wall. There's days where I think, should I just quit and just like go work at a job? Like, is this even worth it? I've asked that, right? Sure, we all have, right? Because it's tough sometimes to be an entrepreneur. Actually, it's tough a lot of times, right? But nobody talks about it, especially on social media when all you see is people in fancy cars and fancy houses saying, oh, I'm living the life. Like, entrepreneurship can look like that, but there is also an ugly side where you have to work 24 hours in a day, where you have to sacrifice a lot of stuff. And sometimes you might not have income from us because you don't know what's going to happen, right? But when you have the tools and resources and the confidence to keep pushing forward, anything's possible. You're invincible. And so it's really important for me, leadership and confidence go hand in hand, right? Without confidence, you're not going to go out there and, even take the first step or even speak up for yourself and for the people around you. It does take a lot of courage. It does take a lot of confidence because it can be scary sometimes. But when you have a huge purpose, you realize you're not doing this for yourself. You're doing it for other people. You're doing it for a greater good. And it makes makes all the difference in the world because it's not just about you. This is bigger than you.
Right. So you talked about the tools and the resources, and I think that's the turning point. So with some of us who step into entrepreneurship, we step in, as you say, because there's a purpose. And I was just speaking with someone else recently and saying that the open door for entrepreneurship really is problem solving. But you talked about the tools and the resources. So as an entrepreneur, and the days that it really feels like, oh, what am I doing? What are some tools and resources that you use that help you continue to move forward?
For sure. I mean, I do read a lot of self-help books. I read other people's stories, like the books that we have, Asian Women Who Boss Up and International Women of Color Who Boss Up. You know, reading these stories really helped me in my own journey because they've been through the lowest points of their lives. They were able to get up and overcome these situations to be the woman that they're meant to be. And I really like sharing stories like these because we all go through something really bad or we have challenging times and we feel like it's the end of all ends when it's not. It's just, you know, something that's temporary, and, you know, we are capable to overcome it. So one thing I really learned is having support, being okay to ask for help, because if I didn't ask for help, I don't think I'd be here today talking to you about this whole subject of leadership and confidence, right? I actually hired a coach to help me along the way to see all the blind spots that I'm not looking, because I know, as you know, in Asian culture, asking for help is really like not a good thing, right? It's considered a weakness. It's also a huge pride issue because it's like, oh, you're going to ask for a handout, but it's not about asking for a handout, right? If there's something you need help in, then it should be okay to ask for help. You should be okay to invest in yourself and realize that if I ask for help, this can really jumpstart my journey. This can help me be more confident than me doing it alone. Because I've talked to a lot of women, especially women entrepreneurs, and you know, one of the things that they really wish is having more support, having a girl gang, having a girl squads, you know, someone they can turn to when they are feeling down. And that's what we're doing with these books too, right? Just creating a movement, helping women boss up in their own lives, whether it's business or just life in general, right? Because life can be crazy. Life can be tough. Life can be super unpredictable. I mean, who would have thought in 2021 we'd be going through what we're going through, right? And so that's why it's so important to have tools and resources to turn to, especially, you know, we are dealing more with our mental health because we're stuck indoors. We have so many restrictions. We can't really go out as much as we want to. And that really can take a toll on our mental health. And if you don't find ways to help yourself or find tools and resources to help you maintain your mental well-being, then it's really going to affect you in a bad way. And, you know, in our culture, mental health is still a huge taboo, and we want to normalize it as much as we can. And the more we can share our feelings of what we went through, it really helps other people realize, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one who goes through this. There's other people who go through this, and this is normal. It's normal because we're human. We're not robots. Of course, we're going to have days where we feel great, and we're going to have days when we don't feel so great. Like, honestly, last week, I wasn't feeling so great because, you know, we had family members who passed away, and it was just so devastating because we didn't expect it. And you just never know how short life is, right? Especially when times like these happen. But one thing, you know, during the eulogy, there was one lesson that really stuck with me that I want to share with everyone, right? Because my family, we really believe in working as a team, right? And they said, no matter how talented one person is, it's still better to work together as a team. You know, you achieve more, you can create more change, because when you're doing it alone, like, you're going to get overworked, you're going to get burnt out, and you're going to be running around in circles trying to figure out where to go. And so I wanted to share that because it's really important to know that you don't have to do this alone. You can find support systems. You can find Facebook groups. You can find group coaching, one-on-one coaching, have an accountability partner, right? Listen to podcasts, read books, listen to YouTube audios or videos, right? There's so many tools and resources now, especially in the world of the internet, that, you know, it should be limitless. And, you know, being a leader, sometimes you got to go out there and make the first move, even when it's scary. And especially as a woman, right? Like, we've been taught it's so improper to make the first move, blah, blah, blah.
But we have to.
Yeah, we have to.
We have to. Yeah,
it's not easy, right? And that's part of being a leader, right?
Hey, this is a great episode, right? Want to carry the insight from our show wherever you go? Visit myjoyisvaluable.com for the best resources that we've gathered that are inspired by expert guests. Find support for your business, tools to organize your life, and more. That's myjoyisvaluable.com.
Well, I think part of it also is because the conversation that you're having about part of being a leader, part of it is also acknowledging that you have the capacity to lead, right? And so a lot of people are still in a space where I'm not a leader. I'm not what a leader looks like.
Yeah.
So I think part of what I'm hearing is acknowledging that you have a vision and a purpose.
Yeah.
But also with that vision and purpose, doing whatever it is that you need to support yourself in the execution of that, with the self-help and with the healing tools and with the resources that you find online. So my question is, with that, you have the vision, you have the purpose, you're telling the stories of Asian women. So let's get into some tactics, right? Because a lot of things that exist right now are inspiration based, and I like to be tactical with my work. So you have a platform that you've maintained for over 700, you said 700 episodes. You started 5 years ago. What has been one of the best resources or tools that you've used to help you keep producing 700 episodes? What did you use to keep producing? What was the best investment that you had?
Yeah. Honestly, really just being able to keep interviewing these women, right? Even though there's days where I feel really like tired and overworked, because sometimes I would interview 20 women in one day so that, I have enough content for the next month or so. Gotcha. But hearing every person's story is totally different. I have the same outline, but everything is totally different. And most people have gone through something really, really bad, right? But was able to come out of it. And I realized, like, if these women have gone through worse things than I have and can still get up in the morning, can still see the worth within themselves to take action, then I can do it as well. And even just getting messages from listeners, how the podcast has helped them, even start a side hustle and turn it into a full-time business, or even just have the courage to start public speaking. Because public speaking isn't, it's hard, right? For some people, it's hard. Even doing videos is not easy. I remember doing my first video. It was really, really, really bad. I mean, I was there trying to do a 2-minute video. It took me 2 hours. And I almost quit. And if I wasn't in this, women's group, I still wouldn't be doing videos. I saw that there were other women who were in the same position as me, who were just as scared, who had all these running thoughts in their head. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have done it. I realized if they're going through what I'm going through, then I should be able to do it. I ended up kicking myself in the butt because I saw other people doing it. And that's why representation is so important. Sharing these stories is so important. And being vulnerable is also very important, right? Because we see vulnerability as a weakness when it should be our strength. Right. So
I'm hearing a few things, and I always like to pull those things apart. So number one, so tactically, you have an outline for your interviews. And so you're working with the same outline. Number two, what I heard is that you're interviewing these women in batches. So you're interviewing several women at once, so that you can get plenty of content. And then number three, what I heard is that you were willing to be imperfect, right? Number four, what I heard was that you were in a group. So you're in a group with other women who are holding you accountable. And then, of course, you're vulnerable in that group. So that's number five. And so then another tactical conversation with you about producing and continuing to produce. Are you producing this on your own? Do you have a team?
I actually like producing them on my own because they're short episodes too. They're not like 3 hours long. They're like 10 to 15 minutes. And it's also
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Right. It's also my form of, I guess, meditation, or just kind of like a mind dump on things. I also like to listen to the stories again and take notes out of it. So it's just my time where I can just kind of breathe a little bit and just mind dump everything, like just let everything go, because we need to have time to ourselves where we can just dump everything that we're thinking of, right? You just need to have that mind dump moment so that you can clear your head, and then you renew that energy, and then you're good as new again.
Wow. Okay. So short form. So you're doing short form interviews. And I guess that then, it is easy to do 20 women at one time.
Yeah.
So, okay. So
and I also do season breaks.
Nice. Okay. So, so then another question. So you're at 1 million downloads. I assume you have sponsorship.
I actually didn't do any sponsorships.
Okay.
I had some, and some didn't pan out, like, get going up to them. And then some just didn't align with podcasts, right? Like
you had some sponsorship, but not anymore.
No, I had people come up to me. And I also went and kind of like outreach sponsors, but it didn't pan out. So
gotcha. So you decided not to do any.
No. And at the time there was so much pressure with the standards of sponsorship. Like, you need to get a certain amount of downloads each episode. And if you're not hitting it, and it just like, nobody realized like, you don't actually really need to do that. So, sometimes when I get super pressured, I just like kind of just let it go and just kind of let it take its course. So it's not a big deal for me. I can still plug some of the things I want to do. If they want a free gift, if they want to, pre-order the books, and I just put that in, my intro and outros. Yeah. So
how are you sustaining the podcast?
Yeah. I sell online courses, I do coaching, I do speaking, and then,
Yeah. And that's a conversation that we have with other people about whatever work that they're doing, whatever you're passionate about can be sustained by the other work. So I think there's a lot of pressure for people to produce things with the mindset that this thing that I'm producing is going to generate income. When, as you said, when you created this was to meet a need that you had, and so if you're sustaining the need that you have, and it's allowing you, as you say, to mind up, to refresh yourself, then, it will be supported by the other endeavors that you have, like the books that you're working on. That's amazing.
And, people don't realize podcasting is still a huge way for people to get to know who you are. They hear your voice every single day, or every time they download an episode, they get to know you on a deeper level. They get to know the real you versus like what they see on the internet. So, this is a tool to help you build your brand along the process, right? And if you know how to use it properly, like you can, like anything's the limit, right? People come up to me asking to write articles for them for Mind Valley, which I didn't even know what it was at the time, but I was like, oh my God, I didn't know how big they were. And they're asking me, and it was because of the podcast. And so sometimes when you're just out there talking about what you believe in, or even talking about your hobbies, you never know who's listening. Like, I know one girl who has a podcast about a TV show that has Malcolm Jamal Warner on it. And he actually follows that podcast because it's about the show that he's in. And she really wanted to have an interview with him, but she was so scared that he would say no because, he's Malcolm Jamal Warner. It took her a year to actually even just have the courage to ask him. And of course he said yes, because he was already following the show.
I listened to the show, of course.
Yeah, I follow you. Yeah, of course. Right. And so they had a video, like a Zoom chat, and I think it was recorded, but I just remember her sharing the photo and sharing the story. So I thought that was really cool. And that wouldn't have happened if she didn't have a podcast about his show. So you just never know what's going to happen.
Want to hear more fantastic shows like this one? Visit blackwomenpodcasting.com, the only podcast directory and platform exclusively featuring the voices of Black women across the globe. Listen to experts in business, relationships, spirituality, culture, and more. blackwomenpodcasting.com.
So there's so many beautiful tips that you've left for us. And, I love how open you were in talking about it, because what I have a platform myself. So it's Black Women Podcasting, and we're working to make sure that we're amplifying the voices of women and doing the same, having the same mission as you, where we want to make sure that as the model minority, or as a minority, and it's just either way, whatever it is, it's a limited story about whoever you see in front of you. So it's just the limitation of the story. What I'm wondering for you, because I want to dig a little bit more into your actual story, right? So a few things about that. So we got the tactical stuff about the podcasting. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be 10 to 15 minutes gives enough, right? It allows you to sustain. It allows you to continue to have your message out there. It's allowed you to continue to be here for 5 years, right? I want to know a few things about what you might have done earlier. So you've been doing this for 5 years.
Probably started earlier.
Earlier. Say again?
Started earlier. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Because when I first started my podcast, I was going through so many thoughts in my head, like thinking, oh, is this going to be good? Are people going to think I'm some crazy Asian girl who has a podcast? Are people going to like my voice? Is this going to be a failure? And of course, when we start something new, we go through all those thoughts, right? Because like I said, we don't embrace the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. And we always think the worst things of everything. And so for me, it's just start before you're ready. Especially as women, we overthink everything and we prepare to the point where we end up not taking action. And because we go through this as women, we face a huge confidence gap from the men, because men, even if they're 20% ready, they're still going to go for it. And it's okay if they don't it's okay if they don't shoot the shot, right? At least they were willing to shoot it.
Right. And that is so true about, we want to be 150% ready. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that as women, we also feel obligated to so many people.
It's true.
Versus this freedom of just like, hey, I just got to do it.
There's so many gender biases we go through, right? And, what a woman is supposed to act like. And I mean, who decided what a woman should act like, right? I mean, if we go after something we love, we're considered aggressive. Well, if a man does the same thing, he's considered confident or courageous. Well, why can't we be the same? And if if every single person will have to call me aggressive, I'll just do it till we make that change that we deserve, right? It's either we eliminate those words or we just embrace it and go for it and be like, yeah, I'm aggressive because I've been sitting here and, not saying anything for the longest time. It's time for me to be aggressive. So I hope that helps someone out there today.
Sure. So we know what you would have started earlier. What would you have given up earlier?
Given up earlier? Mm-hmm. Probably my stubbornness, because back then I just thought I could do everything on my own, right? And not asking for help. I think being able to ask for help was something that I wish I would have done earlier too. I mean, when I first started my podcast, I wasn't a mastermind, but at the same time, it's like I wanted to have like so many, like 5 million ideas running in my head, and I didn't do any of them, right? Because I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to pay for that. I don't want to invest myself in this. I don't want to be in this, right? And so that really delays our success. So of course, you'll know what's right for you because nobody knows you better than you, right?
Sure.
And so of course people are like, yeah, what if you invest in something, it doesn't work out? Well, I can't guarantee it'll work for you, but sometimes when things don't work out, it could be a lesson, right? There's always a lesson to every single thing that happens in your life. And the more you see things as a lesson, the more you can share your story out there. And, you'll be able to tell people what you went through and hopefully they don't make the same mistake. But the more you learn to go with your gut feeling, it does, of course, it's not going to look like how you pictured it in your head, but everything will make sense in the long run.
Awesome. So you have, when I did the research on you, I saw that you have a group, Asian women entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the most beneficial thing that you've been able to offer the group?
I think just support, just being able to be vulnerable, sharing any type of inspiration that can help them through the day, because, I'll share a quote and they'd be like, oh, I just needed that today. I just really needed that. Or just share my honesty. Like even working on the books, right? When I first started asking women to be a part of the book, I got a lot of rejection, right? And I think people just don't talk about rejection enough. I went through a lot of it to the point where I was eating my feelings. And so just being able to share, like, I went through so much rejection. I hope this can help you realize, like, I go through it too, but I keep moving forward. Yes, I kind of wallow in my sorrow a little bit because that's fine, right? We got to feel the way that we feel. or feel our feelings. But after that, we pick ourselves back up and keep moving forward.
Yeah, the conversation about rejection is a big one.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a fantastic conversation that we've been able to have. And so wanted to ask a question and hope that you can help. So number one, I know that you are Asian and you are not a representative of the entire Asian community.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm not.
That's number one. Okay. Before I start this. So I am also understanding that the Asian community, just like the Black community, is not a monolith. So your answer to this question is specific to you.
Okay.
Right? Not to the Filipino community, but it's specific to you. So we hear all the time about stop Asian hate. But what I'd like to know is, what does love for the Asian community look like to you?
I think love for the Asian community is just having support, knowing, we have each other's backs. I think that's the most important thing, especially with how the media has played this whole situation. It just feels like we're always left out of everything. Even in the history books, we've been left out. Nobody knows about the Chinese Exclusion Act that happened in the States, or even Japanese people being in camps, right? Nobody talks about that in history. So it's like, are we not important? Like, do we not matter? I mean, Asians make up 6% of the population, and, have a huge buying power, and nobody even realizes that. Imagine if you take every Asian person out of America, no offense, but America would be hurting, right? So for us, it's just having an ally, having support, being able to ask how we're doing as well, because a lot of us are really afraid to share what we feel because of our upbringing. We've been told, don't make any noise, stay in the background. If something happens to you, just don't tell anybody because you don't want to make any trouble, even though it's not our fault, right? We still don't want any trouble. And I get that, right? But sometimes we do have to make a little bit of noise so we can create the change that we deserve. I remember reading an article last month about a woman who was walking on the street with her baby, and a man spat on her and her baby 3 times and called her a racial slur. But she was not going to report it because of this mindset of I don't want any trouble. I'm just going to let it go. Her husband was the one who actually went to the police and said, no, we're going to tell them what happened because this isn't right. So it's really important also to encourage, if you have Asian friends or family, to speak up when something bad happened to them, right? To tell them you need to speak up and share this because you're not the only one who goes through this.
Right.
And the more awareness we can bring that this is something that's been happening a lot and it's on a rise, especially, what really hurts me the most is people attacking our elderly. I don't know what people get out of that, attacking a 70 or 80-year-old. For me, that could be my grandmother, that could be my parents. And it just hits close to home, too close to home, right? Especially with that Filipino lady in New York who got stomped in the head, and the hotel or the building staff just closed the door on her. Is she not a person? Is she just, she's just a body? That's it. So, love is support, ally, being able to ask how they're doing, encourage them to speak up and maybe share some of the stories you went through, because we all go through similar things, right? We all go through similar things. And when they can understand that, this is not just about you, this is actually a bigger problem. And the more silent we are, the more it's going to be a bigger problem, especially for Asian women, because we get targeted a lot more than men because of this notion that we're quiet and submissive.
Right. Yeah. Well, well, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing a lot better, especially, when the whole Atlanta shooting happened, that really, that was really hard for me to I was having a hard time for sure, because 6 Asian women died, and then they're not being televised, right? Or talked about, or not being humanized. And they're actually, they're even being blamed because, people think they were sex workers, and saying it's it's because they're sex workers. This guy decided to shoot all of them. I was like, no, that's not an excuse.
That's not even, I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're
a person's a person.
Exactly.
It's a person, and people don't realize, like, if that's what they want to do for a living, that's fine, right? We can't stop anyone from doing that. But there's also another story where there are a lot of people who come to America and Canada thinking they're going to have the American dream and got scammed into the sex trade, right? So they're doing it because they have no other choice. And so sometimes
and that's
it's not
a story. That's a story as well. And I think with those things, the work that you're doing is so terribly important, because when people tell their stories, that's when the humanity comes, and that's when people start to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I didn't have certain choices as well, and so I think the work that you're doing is terribly important. The work that all of us are doing to amplify stories and help people claim their voices, which is really our power here, is vital. So I really appreciate the time that you're spending with us today. So tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on my website, SheenaYapChan.com. I have a free report called 8 Ways to Boss Up in Life and Confidence. I also offer a complimentary 20-minute coaching on self-confidence. And you can also pre-order my book, Asian Women Who Boss Up, there if you like. You can also check out my podcast, The Tao of Self-Confidence. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or you can check out thetaoofselfconfidence.com. And if for some reason you kind of blanked out, just Google Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to 10,000 Women, 10,000 Stages. Share this episode with someone who needs it. Find us at 10,000women10,000stages.com.